Is the Constitution built to contain someone like Donald Trump?
I consider this the biggest threat to the rule of law, probably in American history.
Who's going to hold Trump ultimately to account?
How concerned are you about him taking you on?
To be taken on by Trump is really a badge of honor.
Hey everybody, and welcome back into the Sanity podcast. Dave Briggs, Allison Camerata, and a very special guest today, one of the most prominent attorneys in the country, named to the Time 100 list. He has taken on the biggest of big, including the oldest and biggest gun company in the United States, Alex Jones and InfoWars, Josh Koskoff, the third generation of Koskoffs at Koskoff, and Peter is here with us. Good to see you, sir.
Good to be here. Thank you, Dave.
Time 100. So we have Joe Rogan, Mark Zuckerberg, Snoop Dogg, Josh Koskoff.
Makes
it's
sense.
a good crop.
Good company.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. None of whom know who I am. So that's how they're all are.
What was that moment like, being around that crowd?
I don't know, because they wouldn't let me near them. And had no interest in being near me. I mean, it was, it was just, the whole thing was so out of character for me to be at a place, something like that. It's not typically where a lawyer spends their time.
Yeah, but I mean, Josh, you have chosen very high profile and I would say very challenging cases. I mean, the one that you won, and we'll get to this later, but the one that you won for the parents in Newtown against the gun manufacturer,
Remington.
I mean, that was an unwinnable case and you won it.
What, it was?
Yes, it was, because there were shield laws that kept the gun manufacturers from ever being sued, and you took that on. And so, I mean, where do you get that chutzpah? If I can drop another Yiddish term.
Yeah, well, that's pretty good. You don't think of that when you go into one of these things, because remember, it starts with an actual sit down with a family that's just been completely gutted and are living in the aftermath, in the Newtown case, of a terrible mass shooting, losing their children. And so it really just starts with listening, and you're not thinking about laws. You're not even thinking about lawsuits. You're just thinking about comforting them and listening to and trying to absorb some of the pain. And then it's your job to start to think about what you've just heard.
We're talking, of course, about the Sandy Hook school shooting where 20 first graders lost their lives and 6 teachers. I'm sure you received dozens of texts or emails saying, "Are you crazy? No one can ever win against the gun companies, let alone Remington, the oldest and biggest."
I did, which was news to me, because actually I didn't have any experience in the field whatsoever. So I think that the way I look at it is that being colossally ignorant about the law of guns was a great asset. But I didn't know anything about firearms at all either. So the subject matter was something I didn't know about. The law was something I didn't know about. So I was a blank slate.
Oh my gosh. And then you won a $73 million settlement for
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't happen overnight, obviously, Allison. That case took almost 10 years. So I did learn a lot along the way. And I mean, that's what you, after listening and accumulating as much information as you can, you go to work, and then you roll up your sleeves and you look at what's in front of you, and you start to put the pieces together. And that just takes a lot of time.
We want to circle back to that and Alex Jones and some of the other cases, but I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about your concern for the lawlessness existing in this country directly from the Trump administration. On at least a half a dozen regards.
At least.
Are we being alarmist when we say that, and that we say a constitutional crisis feels near, if not existing?
No, not at all. I mean, one thing about Trump is he's not subtle, right? So I think by design, we are seeing him go in and arrest a judge, right? We are seeing him deport an innocent man. He is testing the limits of, and he's really pushing the stress lines of our democracy. So I consider this the biggest threat to the rule of law, probably in American history.
When you say deporting an innocent man, you mean Abrego Garcia?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if he was innocent. He was unadjudicated. In other words,
well,
we don't know.
He's innocent. He's legally innocent.
He's legally innocent because he hasn't been tried for anything, right? He hasn't been convicted.
Which makes him as innocent, technically, as you and me. But, people look at his baseball hat and his, tattoos, and okay, maybe he was but that's not how he is. The legal status of an innocent person, just like we all, and no different than us in that respect.
Yeah, I hear you. And so, are you involved now? Or is there a case that Trump is involved in that your firm has taken on?
Yes. Actually, on Wednesday, two of my colleagues are going down to Washington to argue to keep in place an injunction that is preventing Trump from releasing the names of FBI agents to basically the public who investigated January 6th.
Why does the Trump administration say they need those names?
That's a great question.
I mean, have they tried to justify it? Because I find that strange. I
Yeah.
find it strange that they want to be able to release the name of FBI agents who were trying to put down a riot, a violent riot. Doesn't everybody in the country want FBI agents and law enforcement to be able to stop a violent riot?
Yeah.
So what is the Trump administration's justification?
Well, everybody in America wants that except for one person, and that's Trump. So Trump is much more concerned about his own retribution against FBI agents for putting his supporters in jail for their criminal acts of January 6th. So what he's trying to do is strong arm all aspects of law enforcement. So he's already got the DOJ right under his control because he's got an attorney general who is really acting as Trump's private lawyer and not a lawyer for all of us, which is her sworn duty. And so he wants all of the rank and file law enforcement to do his biting, and he wants to teach FBI agents a lesson that if they investigate him in the future, he's going to dox them, he's going to expose them, and he's going to subject them to potentially serious harassment or even physical harm.
Is the Constitution built to contain someone like Donald Trump? Because it doesn't appear there are any consequences as of yet.
Yeah, I think the concept, the way this is, by the way, let me add it. I've thought about the three branches of government as kind of like rock, paper, scissors. Rock, paper beats rock, rock beats scissors, scissor cuts paper. And so they're interconnected relationships where one trumps the other. And the idea is that everybody will abide by the rules, right? But what happens when an executive, the president, decides, no, my government's not going to abide by these rules, or I'm going to change the rules? That's what we're seeing. And we don't know, Dave. We just don't know because these are such accepted norms that he is deciding to push. Nobody knows what happens to make him compliant, like with a Supreme Court ruling. The only analogy that I could think of was back in segregation but that was the government ordering the National Guard in to desegregate communities that were dragging their feet, right? He is the government. He owns the government. He is the commander in chief.
In a Congress that's largely absent.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely enabling Congress, at least in terms of the those that are in the majority.
But when you say that your law firm is going to get involved with fighting this and fighting President Trump's plan to release the names, what are you going to do? Well,
we already have an injunction in place, a temporary injunction.
Meaning you are going to stop him from releasing the names.
Exactly.
Okay.
Or from even exchanging names within department agencies. So even the DOJ exchanging names with the White House to the extent that they haven't already. So we represent 14,000 FBI agents who are very scared right now about their names being put online. And this dovetails with Alex Jones and just the change in which technology has helped to accelerate, these malign influences that are really dividing us. It's all connected, so whereas once upon a time, the release of a name would be, would still be potentially harmful. It could only reach a certain amount of people, as many people as you could tell or publish or read your newspaper. But now if it could be put on Twitter, it's reaching the entire universe in a matter of milliseconds. So the reach is extraordinary. And when you reach, hundreds of millions of people, you're reaching some pretty crazy people. You're reaching some pretty violent people. You're reaching some pretty vulnerable people. That's what we learned in Alex Jones. So it doesn't take a big percentage of those people to really do harm to a targeted individual.
I'm curious, among other issues, the attack on some of the biggest and most powerful law firms in the country, most of who have taken about 5 minutes and have paid the shakedown. Yeah. We're talking about $1 billion almost. 4 firms have fought back. 4. We're talking about almost $1 billion paid up instantly. How concerned are you about the precedent? How concerned are you about him taking you on?
Well, if he takes me on, I would be able to tell my grandchildren that. I honestly think that to be taken on by Trump is really a badge of honor, because it means you're doing something right. You're upholding the rule of law. You're standing up to an abusive tyrant who has no regard whatsoever for the rule of law or his role as a commander in chief or on behalf of the American people, but only looks after himself. And he is, and I think I'm very, very disturbed by the capitulation of these major firms. But I will say one thing. Yes, there have been 4 firms, I think, Perkins Coie, Wilmer Hale, and at Sussman Godfrey, a couple others, yes, who have stood up, as anybody would, because it's such a blatantly unconstitutional executive order. But they have been joined by over 500 firms. We're one of them. We signed off on amicus brief, which is for the listeners who don't know what that might mean. It's just you cannot be part of a case or a lawyer representing a client in the particular case, but you can still say, hey, we support your case because it stands for something that we believe in. So that's called an amicus, or friend of the court brief. And so those are something that we're very proud to have signed off on, an amicus brief for the Perkins Coie case. And basically what we're saying is that this executive order is blatantly unconstitutional, and you cannot interfere with an individual's right to the counsel they're choosing.
But can you tell me why most of those firms took about, as I said, 5 minutes to answer, yes, we will pay this fee? What's the calculation they're making?
I mean, it's a profile in cowardice, in my view. It's an absolute craven it must be a financial calculation, Dave. I can't think of anything else. It's definitely a complete abrogation of like the basically core responsibility of being a lawyer, which is speaking truth to power or representing an individual, more importantly, who with a grievance, even against powerful interests like the government or corporate interests or whatever it may be. I mean, that's a core principle of our democracy, is redress, getting redress in the courts, including against the government.
I mean, who's going to hold Trump ultimately to account? How is this going to work? In other words, if the Supreme Court just unanimously ruled that the White House needs to facilitate the return of Abrego Garcia, and they don't do it, what happens?
Well, I think that's an open question. I think that's a question everybody's asking. I think that's the problem, is that typically the government would step in and enforce a Supreme Court, I would think, at the military or the National Guard or whatever. I think people aren't really, we're getting caught up in whether this is a constitutional crisis, but in some ways we're forgetting, why should it even take a Supreme Court to tell a functioning, decent government that if you deport an innocent man to a prison, even if it was a luxury prison in another country, and it was wrong and a mistake, you need to stop everything and pull all levers of government and bring that man home, period. So it's beyond me why they needed to even intervene with the Supreme Court.
You took on Harvard in a case back in 2019. Today, they have become target number 1 of the administration, and Harvard is fighting back, suing the Trump administration over $2 billion in federal funds that have been pulled, and they've formed what's called a private collective to fight back, meaning I think 10 or so schools have joined them. What are your thoughts on the targeting of these universities, in particular Harvard, and how would you defend them?
I mean, I find it's a strange bedfellow situation for me. In my case, we were David and Harvard was Goliath, as they typically are in any lawsuit.
And why did you take them on, just quickly?
Because they helped perpetrate a crime in 1850 and continue to hold the spoils of slavery and refuse to give them back to the descendant who lives in Connecticut. You want to hear more? Tune in next week. But that's a case in and of itself. But Harvard is typically the big gorilla, and so here it's kind of interesting to see them in the shoes of David versus the Goliath of a government trying to put the screws on Harvard to tell them how to teach their history. I mean, Harvard's teaching of history is not a paragon of truth in and of itself, if you ask me. But be that as it may, the government shouldn't dictate that. Well, so I fully support it.
It's funny you say that. We had on a Harvard law alum and professor, and he said in some ways Harvard has brought this upon themselves. He is by no means a Trump supporter. Yeah. Would you agree with that assessment?
Not really, because I mean, I think that there is this perception out there that the universities are woke, liberal bastions, but they're just teaching. I mean, I think that I don't think they bring on I don't think they bring on the idea of the government, intervening and dictating their education. I think they have certainly brought on people like my client to challenge them and their teaching of history with respect to her own ancestry. So they should be, they should be challenged where they're teaching something that is, half truth or not true. But I don't think they've invited this. I think Trump it's coming from the outside. Trump is putting his hand on it.
I do want to talk about the gun violence and the way you've fought back against that. And it's interesting. I mean, the Trump administration is eclipsing so much that we haven't been covering a violent school shooting lately. I'm sure there have been school shootings, but we just are not covering them because of all of this other stuff. I covered Uvalde. I went there. Do you cover Newtown?
I did.
Yep, me too. I mean, just the most sickening things in the world.
And Parkland and Aurora Movie Theater, and unfortunately far too many.
Yeah. And are you also involved in Uvalde, a similar now case in Uvalde as what you were able to achieve in Newtown?
Yeah, I am. I have represent about 17 of the families who lost children in Uvalde in one case, in two cases, 19 in another case in California. So there's been effectively three different lawsuits that have come out of the Uvalde shooting. And two are in Texas and one's in California.
But again, it's targeting the gun manufacturers.
That's one of the cases. The other, if you know anything about, and I know you do because you covered it, but everybody knows that in Uvalde there were 376 police officers who responded, and it took 77 minutes to intervene in an active shooting situation. And on the other side, you would think it was an entire nation on the other side of this, battle, but it was just one kid who was about 140 pounds, soaking wet. But he had a Daniel Defense AR-15, and he held them at bay for 77 minutes. So there's a lawsuit that is pertaining to those issues of their failed response. That's one lawsuit. There's a second lawsuit against the manufacturer of Daniel Defense and associated accessory and component companies that went into promoting the stuff that the kid accessorized his weapon with, like a holographic sight. There's the local store that sold this kid 2 AR-15s.
Bingo. I want to ask you about that because on the air, I've asked this question for years and I've never gotten an answer. Why can't we hold the gun sellers, the guys who, when an 18-year-old unhinged boy comes in, why can't they ask a few more questions? And why can't we hold them responsible? I mean, it turns out that so many of these guys from Newtown to Aurora to everywhere, they had dropped hints.
Yes.
Why can't the gun sellers say, are you feeling depressed right now, young man?
Right.
What do your friends think about you buying an AR-15? Why do you need a tactical vest with this? Why do you need 500 rounds of ammunition? I'm just curious. Why aren't they allowed, or why don't they ask questions?
Well, I think it's possible that some of them do, by the way. But I think that the way the gun industry looks at it is we will do only up to what the law requires us to do, the criminal laws or the regulations, and we will do not an ounce more. So they hide behind the law. So there's no law requiring them to make these kind of inquiries that you're talking about. However, you can hold them liable if they sell a weapon to somebody who's like obviously impaired or likely to use it in a manner to, kill somebody or hurt somebody. Proving that can be challenging, but you can sue them under limited circumstances. In Uvalde, the kid within 8 days of turning 18 is when he committed the crime, and he had visited that store 4 times, and he picked up on the first day a Smith & Wesson rifle, and he had already ordered a Daniel Defense AR-15 within 23 minutes of turning 18 online, which was then delivered to the store. So why they sold him 1, let alone 2 AR-15s is totally unreasonable, but they're going to say they're not required to do anything more. That it's legal in Texas to have.
And so then is it? I mean, then will you lose the case?
I never. last night in these cases.
I know, but I mean, they're right. It is legal. Like, so do we need to change the laws, or I guess that's what you'll try to do in your case, right?
No, I'm not. Well, we can't change the laws of the legislative, the statutes. That's for politicians. I'm trying to, but you can do something. You can do something that's wrong, but not illegal, or unreasonable.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Some of the companies named in this that you didn't name, I believe Meta and
and
Activision.
Yeah.
And that to me is a much bigger societal issue that may in fact have more to do with what's going on in society today.
Exactly. Well, I've come a long way on this, Dave. I used to really be headstrong about the guns as being the only factor. We just have to come to grips with this fact. There are more guns in this country than people. We could outlaw guns tomorrow. There's still more 400, 500 million guns.
Yeah.
So, and you judge the conduct of corporate America in the world that we live in, not in the world we wish we had. So we live in a world awash with guns. We live in a world where a kid in Texas can get an AR-15 when they're 18. Therefore, the actions of corporate America have to be measured against that world, right? So what I found is that the other eye-opening thing was that when I was growing up, at least, we didn't have school shootings. But we had AR-15s, we had adolescents, which sucked, and we had that's it. We had AR-15s, we had kids. We had no school shootings. I feel like Trump knows. But in any event,
We didn't have as many AR-15s, and I mean, didn't we have
Right.
an assault rifle ban?
And in 1994, yeah, but the AR-15s have been on the market for 30 years. They didn't become a hot property until about the elapsing of the assault weapons ban. One of the reasons is there was no market for them. And the gun industry would have loved to have reached me as an adolescent, especially to build a relationship with me, because that's a great consumer. Once you establish a bond with a consumer at that age, you have a consumer for life, right? That's a standard marketing 101 concept. There was one problem. They couldn't reach me. Why? Number one, I had parents, but kids still have parents today. But number two, how are they going to market to me? I couldn't I didn't have money to get a gun magazine. My parents would have to drive me to the store to get one. The catalogs they couldn't just send me catalogs. No gun store was going to let me in the door to try it out and try out different barrels and different magazines and different sites. And so that was, so I didn't even know what an AR-15 was. You have to know what a product is. The first thing you have to do to become interested in anything is to know what it is. Secondly, you have to have an emotional need as to why you need something that you don't actually really need.
Which gets us to social media.
It gets us to Meta. It gets us to Activision. These are the technologies that have changed. So what was the inflection point? The reason we have mass shootings today is largely because of technology and how it has allowed commercial predators of all stripes, the gun industry, Meta, Activision, to target adolescents and children without any regard for the parents, and to do so directly. And it's extremely effective, and it's immersive, the way that they market these products. It's not just a transactional thing. It's not product placement in a movie. You get to try them all in Call of Duty. You get to experience the difference between a barrel lengths, difference between a shotgun, an AR-15, a pistol, a machine gun, all these different things. And you get to experience them within what becomes a pleasurable relationship with killing. And that's why we have mass shootings. Every mass shooter in America of note, every school shooting, there's a long history and relationship with Call of Duty. So it's no more, and look, I would be the first to have said that was a crackpot theory once upon a time. I'm just responding to facts, and that's where not having too much of a bias comes in. I would love to say it's 100% about guns, and in some ways it is, because you can't commit a mass shooting without a gun, but it's reality that we have guns in America. So, and not surprisingly, at the end of the day, both the gun industry and these other industries went astray. Instagram used to be the most innocent,
totally benign.
Yeah. Simple,
at worst,
send
bikini
pictures.
pics.
Yeah. but
And it's
now
not anymore Instagram?
Instagram's the largest advertising company in the world now, by its own admission. And Facebook bought it and turned it into a profit machine. where the goal is to habituate adolescents and all of us and keep us on Instagram for as long as or keep us coming back for more dopamine, and so that they can expose their advertising to us.
Yeah.
And the goal of Call of Duty used to be like a game that was played with a beginning, middle, and end. Now it's just brought us in. Now the goal is just to monetize 24/7 and addict users into that in a repeated multiplayer game where they Call of Duty makes more money after selling the initial download by players adding content as they're playing the game. They sell different skins and different kits.
Yep.
They make 3 times as much after paying $60 for the game. And it's by addicting and stealing people's attention.
Right.
So these are commercial predators who are very much responsible for mass shootings, in my view, in America.
Wow, that's
Sorry to bring
It is-
everybody
no,
down.
No,
but
I think that's
every parent out there should hear this.
Yeah,
they should.
we
Yeah.
all need to hear it. And so, Josh, I mean, how do you get up every day?
I don't.
Yes, you do. I mean, how do you stay hopeful? And this is different than our dose of sanity. How do you stay energized and hopeful? Because a lot of people feel that this is so overwhelming, all the different challenges that we're having right now, be it the political arena, be it teenagers, be it whatever is happening. Like, how are you able to fight this out every day?
Well, I think actually I can it's like, I really do think of it as like a call to arms. Like, it's a moment in time that we don't have. If you have a law degree, one thing about a law degree is it gives you the access to the courts, right? It allows you to represent people. So if I didn't have that, I would be equally frustrated and angry, but I think feel more despondent because I couldn't do literally anything. So I kind of feel like this gives the way I get through these things, and I know everybody has different issues right now with what's going on, but the way I do it is by actually taking steps and trying to do whatever I can. And I have just by luck, I've got the ability to do that because I'm a lawyer.
Well, that's not luck.
Yeah.
I mean, that's preparation.
Yeah, okay.
Schooling.
But at one point, you had no interest in being a lawyer.
Yeah.
Which I find interesting about your journey.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't that I was interested in being a lawyer. I just didn't think I was cut out to be a lawyer. And also, my grandfather was a famous lawyer in his day. My dad was a phenomenal lawyer, like the best ever. And I didn't think I could hold a candle to how good they were. I figured I couldn't affirmatively torpedo the family name if I didn't become a lawyer. But, so I figured it would just maybe wither and die on the way.
Now you could put time 100 on your card.
That's right.
How about dem apples?
Check the box, I guess.
Josh, the beauty of and the horror of the fire hose concept of Donald Trump's, I didn't even get to what I find maybe the most important lawsuit going on, which is a dozen states, thousands of businesses suing the Trump administration over the authority to impose tariffs, which are tanking a healthy economy. And to my read of it, he does not have the authority to impose these tariffs nor declare an emergency. I don't know if you're read up on this particular one. Connecticut, our state, is one of those 12.
Well, I'm not really everybody can become an overnight expert, these days.
Oh, we know.
So it's a little bit outside my area. I will say I was talking to a friend of mine who just got nailed out of the blue with these tariffs. And I was just thinking about, I wonder if we could sue Trump, for, tortious interference with your business, because, for single, self-employed people who are running businesses, importing things from China or wherever, they can't make ends meet now. They're just, and there was no way for them to know this was coming. So yes, we read about what they're doing to the big companies in corporate America, but what about the small shops that have no ability to stand up to this? And the answer is, I don't know. I never understood how it was he had the authority in the first place to unilaterally decide tariffs.
So you're going to sue him?
I mean, there's only so many lawsuits I can bring. But I was already discussed looking into this aspect of helping him out.
It's ironic because we're here for Main Street over Wall Street. I've talked to toy stores here in Westport, Connecticut that say they think these tariffs will wipe them out.
Yeah. Gone.
They're not sure if they can get through a Christmas because they will have nothing on the shelf and can't pass on the tariff to their customers. This is Main Street. Yeah, we are a country built off the back of small business, not necessarily major
Right.
corporation.
Oh, okay, that leads us to the dose of sanity.
Okay.
So we ask all of our guests. I mean, you told us that you feel empowered by doing
Right.
your work, and that's great. But what do you do when you start to feel the wheels coming off
We
the
have to be
bus?
transparent
Yeah.
about this.
Yes.
Well, I told you guys earlier I take drugs.
What kind of drugs, Josh?
Well, is this
I'm
being
taking notes.
broadcast?
Well, I mean, it's not being broadcast at the moment, but I don't want you to get into legal trouble.
Coffee? Are you feeling coffee? And no, I mean, I'm not somebody that hides from the news. So imagine like reading the news and seeing not something like this, but like, okay, what's the next challenge? So that's one way of doing it. Like, and just to figuring out what's wrong with the latest thing that Trump did.
You dive in.
I dive in. Yeah, that's one tonic, and I have colleagues to commiserate with, and I
And
go
you
on
drink
shows
coffee.
like
You
yours.
drink coffee, and then you do legal, other mind-altering things.
Yeah, I go into a cryogenic chamber and I just sit there and put my heads in my hands and cry for 2 hours.
It sounds
And that's
then I come out and I'm a new man.
yeah.
until the next news flash.
But you almost find it invigorating.
Yeah.
It seems. Am I misquoting you?
No, I think because it's such a challenge I think motivated by the fact that this is sort of bringing together the legal community in a way that it typically hasn't before. And again, the ability to do something about it is extremely gratifying.
I relate to what Josh is saying, because don't you feel better because we have a platform to be able to talk about it?
100%.
Exactly.
Like, we have used our career experience and expertise, and that makes me feel not as helpless too, just like what you're talking about your experience allows you to do.
I just like to tell people we're not coming at this with a partisan lens. I was a Republican most of my life. I have most of my values that are conservative values. None of this that Josh mentioned is conservative in its nature. Almost none of it. And I just have to remind everybody under the guise of the Sanity podcast, that's where we come from.
Yeah, no,
you don't have, I admire that, because it doesn't matter who's in power. You don't want to have to chill or not talk about things that are pertinent to what's going on out there. And that's the chilling effect that Trump is having on your business, on the journalism side. And so true journalists like you and news people like you, I really admire you guys doing this. And we're talking about Trump. Go ahead, what are these going to do? Come after us? Yes.
Probably, Josh.
Yeah, I wouldn't tempt fate right now.
Remember those. We do not endorse the views of our guests. Right?
We may play back this clip. Josh, it's been a great pleasure.
Thank you guys.
Really
very nice to meet you.
We'd love to have you back.